Okay, it's 4 o'clock. We're going to call this meeting of Strategic Priorities and Policy Committee to order. I see a quorum of councillors here in the room. I just want to say off the top, I'm chairing, as you know, Mayor Holder is away. He's at the Big City Mayors Caucus meeting in Ottawa. I understand he had a meeting today with the Prime Minister, which hopefully went very well. Colleagues, I'm just going to look first to staff to give us a bit of a presentation. We have the report in front of us, so I'll hear from Ms. Livingston. As you know, there's many meetings about the strategic plan. This is just one of those meetings, and this is the meeting where we're tabling the draft strategy. So, Ms. Livingston. Oh, sorry, before you get underway, any declarations of pecuniary interest? Thank you, Clerk. Okay, I don't see it. Go ahead.
Sorry, I was distracted by my table. You're good to go? Okay, all right. All right, well, thank you very much, and we're happy to be here this afternoon with you and tabling the draft outcomes, expected results, strategies, and metrics for Council's strategic plan and consideration. I'll just touch quickly on our timelines. We committed that we would share with you some of the early feedback on your preliminary vision, mission, and value statements. And then on to the next step. So you've seen this slide many times now. It lays out the timeline and the steps that we're working through to hopefully have a final plan by the end of April. So today we're tabling the outcomes, et cetera, and then move into a period of significant engagement with the community. Back in March, where you'll be debating all of those materials heading towards the April finalization. So from January 16th to today, we have invited the community to comment on your draft vision, mission, and value statements. And we asked the community 3 questions: what words resonated, what could be eliminated, and if you were to write these, what would they say? So I'm able to share with you, these were your preliminary vision statements, just as a reminder. I'm able to share with you some initial feedback that has been received, and this will be open to the community up until the end of February. In terms of the vision statement and what words resonated, the issue of prosperous future, diverse community, the environment, resilient community, and livable city. And some folks have shared with us some draft vision statements that I'll just put up on this screen here for you. They're at your tables as well. I'm sure we'll see many more of these as time goes by in the engagement process, but we wanted to share with you some of the really wonderful ideas that are coming forward from community members. Go back. Great. Thanks, Matt. And there we go. And in terms of the mission statements, again, these were the work that you did a couple of weeks ago, and some of the things that have resonated from that work with Londoners are the notion of fostering change to build a better London for all, mobilizing the public sector, engaged and responsive, and an opportunity to respect. And I'll just show you some of the other statements that have come up. I'll tilt them down a bit here. There, so you can see both of them. So not quite as many statements, but if you have a second to look at them, I think you'll see some quite good ideas, actually, that people have taken the time to share. And I'll just draw to your attention, there are some of the additional comments on the values as well. And back to the slide deck. Great. So here were the value statements that you worked on with a long list of other things to be considered. And so far, some of the things that are really resonating with folks around the values are results driven by community, collective accountability, integrity, and compassion. So I share that as preliminary information for your consideration, and as we indicated, we'll have the full feedback for you for the March 4th SPPC report. In terms of the draft outcomes, expected results, strategies, and metrics, you've seen this slide before as we work towards the development of a strategic plan. So we're making our way down that triangle, if you will. And I'll just take you through the process that we use to develop these pieces. So building on the lessons out of the last strategic plan, what we heard back is it was a good framework. Let's build from that. So we worked with the current strategic areas of focus and priority. We also heard that it was important to be very clear about what people wanted to see achieved, that it be measurable. So you'll see in the document outcome statements in each of those 4 priority areas, as well as expected results, which are, my language is, you'll know it when you see it. How do you know you've achieved that outcome? By the expected result that's been delivered. The strategy is the action to deliver on that outcome and expected result. And there are a number of things that fed into the development of the strategy. So you may remember back to the December 18th meeting where we tabled for you what we call a PEST. It's the Political, Economic, Social, and Technological Trends document, things we should be paying attention to as we look to plan for the next number of years. So that was a piece of information that informed the development of the strategies. There was also the engagement you folks had at the door, which we presented those themes back to you on the December meeting. Also, across the corporation, we've done significant engagement with staff. This is different from the last time. We've gone deeper than the Strategic Thinkers Table. A lot of frontline folks have been involved in this. And we've also had fairly extensive engagement with our agency boards and commissions to help inform the development of the strategies and the metrics. Building on the success of the last strategic plan, we paid attention to those strategies that have a life longer than the past plan, carry forward into the new plan, but also those that had impact, which was identified in our performance report and impact assessment. Again, those were shared with you in December. And finally, again, looking at the last plan. So all of that fed into the development of the strategies that you see in front of you. We just wanted to draw your attention that we're working very hard to have a tight linkage between the multi-year budget and the strategic plan. So the language that is in our strategies and the metrics will also be what drives our strategic plan. And even the way we talk about these things in terms of expected results and metrics, that language will be the same through the multi-year budget as well. So then the metrics that we've identified for you are the things that we'll measure to determine that we've delivered on the outcome and the expected result. Last term, for those of you that were here, you'll recall we put a lot of emphasis on the progress. Did we do what we said we were going to do? We will also do that this time, but we're also interested in being able to measure the change that we're desiring to achieve. So that's the approach we took to developing the material that was in your report and is in front of you this evening. The next step is to move to community engagement, which will begin on Friday. And again, we're seeking feedback from the public on outcomes, expected results, and strategies, as well as any additional feedback on the vision, mission, and value statements. We will be providing you with communication assets to assist you in sharing that with the public so that they can have an opportunity to participate. There are many opportunities for the public should they wish to comment. One is online through getinvolvedlondon.ca. There'll also be a paper survey for those that don't wish to do it online. If any of you would like to have a ward or community meeting, please contact Jen Carter, and we will assist in supporting you in that meeting. We're preparing for each of you a kind of ward meeting in a box to assist you with that process, but if you would like staff at the meeting, just let us know. We are also wanting to make sure that we are able to provide opportunities for people that have lived experience or may not wish to come to a more formal setting to provide feedback. So we're working with a number of organizations across the city to gather feedback and promote the online link with their networks as well. In addition, we're going to hold 2 open houses in February, one at the Goodwill on the 19th and one in South London on the 27th. And finally, we're going to hold a number of pop-ups around the community in order to give people an opportunity to provide feedback. And so you can see the list here. We're trying to get across the city in a fairly extensive way. We are just identifying the location in the southeast, and we'll let you know that as soon as possible. So those are the many ways that the public could engage in providing feedback if they wished. Just reminding you that then on March 4th, we will provide you any additional feedback we've received on the vision, mission, value statements from the public. And at that meeting, you'll begin to debate and set that vision, mission, and values for the plan. You'll also receive the feedback on the draft outcomes, expected results, and strategies. And it's also at that meeting that you'll start to see the very specific targets and financial information associated with each strategy. And that will be the meeting that you begin to set the strategies for the plan. Moving towards another opportunity for debate around those strategies on the 25th, finalization on the 8th, and approval on the 23rd of April. That's it for my presentation, Chair.
Thank you very much, Ms. Livingston. So, colleagues, at this point, I'd like to get into any kind of questions we might have about any of the draft material that's in front of us. If we've got questions for staff, if we could try and keep the questions short and the answers as concise as possible, that'll let us get through as much as we can. This is obviously just one meeting in the course of many meetings where we're going to be talking about the strategic plan and the strategies. I do see there's a couple of suggestions from councillors who want to add things in, and I think we can deal with that after we deal with some questions if anyone has them. Councillor Morgan.
Yes, through the chair. One of the things that I found tricky to navigate last time was the role that our boards and commissions and even other agencies played in supporting the initiatives. I know a number of the measurables are actually actions that would be taken by potentially other organizations. So where in the development of the strategic plan do they fall in, and how do we kind of work with them on making sure their strategic plans align with ours without trying to dictate things that we can't possibly dictate?
Through the chair, we've engaged the agency boards and commissions at the outset. We met with them in November, where they participated in the development of the PEST analysis that was tabled for council. And we also have, so inside the House, we have what we call the Strategic Thinkers Table, which is the folks in each service area that are supporting the development of the strategies for the plan. Each of them acts as a liaison with each agency board and commission to ensure that they are reflected in this document, that their strategies are there, that there are metrics there from the agency boards and commissions that wish to participate. And we've held a couple of working sessions with them as well to make sure it's reflected, with the ABCs, to make sure it's reflected accurately. So they've been with us all along.
And as a follow-up, just so I understand the process, if it becomes evident at some point that as they develop their strategic plans and focus their resources, that something that might be in ours is not maybe a focus for them, would we deal with that in some sort of update to the strategic plan? Because certainly I would think there's value in measuring an outcome of something that we don't have any control over executing.
Through the chair, so the metrics that we've put in place around the outcomes and strategies are, we've tried to be very clear, especially within civic administration, that they exist and that we're able to impact. The ones that you see here from the ABCs are from them. We didn't put them in for them, if that's where you're going. And in terms of updating, we have that opportunity as we do the progress reports each time in terms of changing timelines and those kinds of things.
Councillor Lewis, and then I have Councillor Turner next.
Thank you, and through you, Mr. Chair, to staff. I was just wondering, and understanding that these are coming from outside agencies, that we may not have an answer to this. Just when we're talking about increasing diversity, I was wondering if staff may be able to comment on SOC 11, where one of the metrics is indicating the number of Indigenous people served. And I'm wondering if there's a reason that we're focusing specifically on the Indigenous population at our libraries rather than people from any visible minority group.
Through the chair, my understanding is that the library has a very intentional desire here, and so there's that expression, what gets measured gets done, and so I think that is why they've been quite specific in this instance. I don't believe it's to mean that they're not measuring in other areas as well.
Great, thank you for that, and I'll just add the follow-up comment that I know that the library has done a fantastic job of putting together recommended reading lists for the LGBTQ community, for example. So knowing that they were making efforts in one area that wasn't listed in the metrics, I was just wondering, but I appreciate the clarification there.
Councillor Turner, then Councillor Hopkins, and I think I saw Councillor Van Meebergen. Go ahead, Councillor Turner. Okay.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm just going to stand because Ms. Livingston is hiding behind the podium over there. Thank you for putting all this together. This is helpful. It's a great approach. I like the layout, especially in Appendix B, talking about strengthening the sections and the outcome the results, the strategy, the metrics. The one thing that might be challenging, and maybe perhaps as a bit of a recommendation, if I didn't count all the way through, I just saw 24 pages and about 20 per page, so there's about 500 metrics that we're using. In one of my classes a ways back, we talked about KPIs and how to find KPIs that are meaningful at a glance and can actually encompass all of these things. So there needs to be something that this drills down to. So the 500 of these are the drill downs. In school, they talked about hunting the mother elephant. And if you want to go looking for elephants, if you want to take their pictures, you look for the mother elephant, and that's where you find all the other elephants. In this circumstance, if we were to take housing, for example, we've got a number of chronic homeless living in supportive housing, number of individuals and families experiencing chronic homelessness, a lot of really good indicators at the drill down level. But on the whole, as a city, if we're taking a look at that, how do we report that out to the city? We say percentage of Londoners that are chronically underhoused, for example. And all of that stems from about 6 or 7 different metrics underneath that. So if we have an issue with that, we know to look a little bit deeper. And in order to be useful to Londoners, if we put this up on websites and stuff, that it needs to be helpful at a glance to say, okay, these key areas on these outcomes, this is the key indicator that shows whether this one's going right or wrong. So perhaps there's a way as we move forward through this to try and take a look and say, is there one that encompasses all of that? And then might be a little more finite as we drill down from that. But I think these are really helpful to see these coming from agencies, boards and commissions, and from staff as well, to say these are really measurable things, and this is how we can help execute the strategies, the results, and those outcomes.
I'm not sure I detected a question at the end of that, but interesting comments. Councillor Hopkins.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you for the report. I found it very informative. And as I was reading it, I was wondering if there was any merit in looking at our strategic plan every year. And I know you mentioned there is a progress report that we will be receiving. If you could give us a little bit more detail of how this progress report would look like, and if that would be an opportunity if we wanted to change or add to the strategic plan, that we could do that through the progress report or not.
Through the chair, the progress report is a semi-annual report. What you don't see here are all the detailed milestones on delivering on each of these strategies. And so the progress report reports out on that. Where are we in the achievement of these multi-year strategies? That's one report that you will see as we move forward with reporting. The second one is what we call the performance report, where it looks at the metrics and the targets that will be set and reports out each year on where we're at in terms of achieving those. Those would both be the instances that you may wish to look at course correction in terms of how we're delivering. I would just draw to your attention that this document drives the multi-year budget. So any course correction that occurs would, of course, then have to be reflected through the annual budget updates as well.
Okay, I don't see anyone else for questions. So I know that Councillor Lewis had some suggested additions to the draft strategy. So maybe I'll go to Councillor Lewis. Go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and through you, I will put forward 2 additions, so I'll do these in separate motions. The first motion is that staff be requested, in aligning with the direction from Civic Works and Council, to add to LPS subsection C of Appendix B of the draft strategic plan, an LPS 14, to improve resident satisfaction with winter road and sidewalk maintenance, and that the following metrics be added. A, to reduce the number of customer complaints received through ES London, and B, additional metrics to be reviewed through the multi-year budget process, and that all following LPS cases be renumbered accordingly. And of course, as colleagues know, this was staff was directed to prepare a report to bring back to us through Civic Works, and that was passed by council on options for enhanced winter road and sidewalk maintenance. So that report is coming back. Because this is going to go out to public consultation, I think it's important that this be included in the strategic plan so that the public can weigh in on where this falls as a priority for them as well.
Is there a seconder for that addition? Councillor Morgan, okay, discussion on that motion, which is to just add in that part to renumber the LPS outcomes. Councillor Lehman.
I'm just not clear on the process here. Is this meeting to start adding in various areas of concern that we might not be seeing here so far, or is this kind of a starting point, and then we're going to go out and talk to folks and get feedback, and that's when we get down to maybe additions or changes?
So my perspective is that the purpose of the meeting is really to receive the draft report. Of course, every meeting, councillors can bring forward motions if they think that there's something that they would like to do related to the matter that we're dealing with. I think the idea of adding in some ideas into the draft now is a lot better than waiting till after the public consultation's over and then saying, oh, I've got an idea. So I think earlier in this case is better than later. But I don't know that we want to have a huge discussion about whether we want to take things out or add a lot of things in, or, because we do, in terms of the timeline Ms. Livingston just went over, we're dealing with this here at committee, it goes to council tomorrow. We want to be posting it online on Friday. So we don't want to be making a whole lot of rewrites of the strategic plan. I don't think that would be good in terms of the draft strategic plan. And then once we have the feedback from the community, we could have another round of amendments or changes at that time on the March 4th meeting and the March 25th meeting, which is the substantive debate. So we don't have to do everything now, is what I'm trying to say. Councillor Squire.
Just from my point of view, but I've been approached by different groups that are sort of in my ward or related. For instance, the biking community, one of the organizations has come forward and said they'd like to have input into the strategic plan, and they'll do that in some way. Similarly, the University Student Council has approached me, and they're very interested in having things that'll be included in the strategic plan that relate to them and the London community, which I think are great things, is to have those people involved. They may not go to public sessions, they may bring them to me or some other way, so I assume this is a fluid document that we'll be able to add things to as we go along.
Any other discussion on the motion from Councillor Lewis? Councillor Van Holst.
Thank you. I have no problem with Councillor Lewis's motion, although having seen these, it might be good to have all of the additions in a separate document so we can see here's what's proposed to be added rather than having to search through them to find out what might be new. So perhaps a different process would be better. If this is one exception, I don't mind, but I had a number of things. I don't know if I'll go through this one at a time and present those today, though.
My hope was that there would be a small number of additions that we would be dealing with today, since really we're just receiving the strategic plan. If it turns out that there's a very large number of things that people would like to add, perhaps we'll have to consider something different. For example, changing the timeline about when we're going to be able to turn the document around, the process for consulting the public, maybe the dates of some of the meetings. So I guess we'll see how it goes. A couple additions is one thing, a whole lot is different, and we could be here for quite a while if that's where we end up going. Any other comments on Councillor Lewis's motion about adding this in? Okay, let's go to Councillor Lewis to wrap up. Go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And I would just like to share and encourage colleagues to do, if you do want to bring additions forward, of course, there will be future opportunities for additions or deletions. But of course, in bringing this forward and in bringing forward the other motion that I have today, I've done so in consultation with staff and asking them what areas of the strategic plan this might best fit into. So again, I would encourage colleagues to, when you come prepared, know what you want to put in there. In this case, this is something that we dealt with at Civic Works already, so it's already a direction from council. I think it's important for the public to be able to weigh in. I know that I've had consultations with my ward already. In fact, I hosted a town hall on Saturday and got some great feedback from people, but I want to hear from your wards as well, and I'm sure that you do too, and that's why I'm keen to get this added today so that it's part of the public consultation process throughout the month of February, and people can weigh in on it in that process, whether that's in person or online.
Okay, I've exhausted the speakers list. Let's open up the vote.
Closing the vote, that motion carries 14-0.
Okay, I see another one here on the added agenda. This is public Wi-Fi and recreation facilities. I know it's signed by several councillors. Councillor Lewis, are you speaking to? Go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and hopefully my co-signers may want to weigh in on this as well, although if I carry it all, then they can certainly say they just agree. This is, again, a motion that I'm bringing forward after consultation, not only through the election campaign, but with constituents since, as well as in speaking with staff. I've had conversations with Mr. Stafford and his staff, and with Mr. Daly as well, about the feasibility of this. It is actually something that aligns nicely with the LPS part of the strategic plan, and specifically LPS number 17, although I think that there's also an argument to be made that it supports the SOC part of the strategic plan in terms of enhancing visits to community centers and the customer satisfaction that comes from this. So what I would like to put forward is that civic administration be directed to review opportunities and bring forward associated targets in the 2019 to 2023 strategic plan, and an associated business case as part of the 2020 multi-year budget process to provide public Wi-Fi in recreation facilities where there is a business and or customer need and appropriate network connectivity is available or can be reasonably achieved for implementation beginning in 2020, and to target rollout completion by 2022.
Is there a seconder for that? Which is slightly different than the last motion. Councillor Van Holst, was that your hand? Yeah, okay. Discussion? Councillor Turner.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I think through to your staff, is this something that that we've already considered and are looking to embark upon, regardless of what council direction might be?
Through the chair. So currently, right now, as we have new community centers and we build the Wi-Fi in, that is part of the plan. We don't, there's a couple of areas that there are some that don't have the connectivity to certain centers. It does vary throughout the, so we have been looking at that, and where possible we do put that in, but there is resources required to move that forward and look at existing centers to put that forward, because there are costs that need to be covered. So we've been doing them as we move forward, but this would be incrementality above what we're already doing.
Thank you for that. I agree with the sentiment of what's going forward with this. It sounds very tactical. And in a strategic plan, you don't typically see specific tactical items at this level, right? We've got outcome, result, strategy. So the strategy in this is to try and increase engagement and connectivity in facilities, rather than to say the tactic of executing that strategy would be to have Wi-Fi in all of our arenas and parks. So it ends up being one level too low for, I think, this document. So I'm not sure if this is the appropriate place to bring it forward. I certainly think it's an appropriate thing for us to be embarking upon, but I'm not sure if it enters into this debate at the right time right now.
Councillor Squire and then Councillor Hopkins.
Through you, Mr. Chair, just from my point of view, I agree it's it's an interesting idea. My concern is that in the motion, it's already saying, well, we're going to look at it. On top of that, a business case is going to be presented as a part of the next multi-year budget. So it's really like we've already accepted that we really like the idea and we're going to do it. But then the cost is going to land on our table for the next multi-year budget. And I have no idea if that number is $1 million, $100,000. So it seems to me that there's another step, which is for somebody to come back with a report and say, here's what this involves, here's what it costs. Similarly to what was done with the snow removal, which was, let's have staff look at it, see if we can implement it, see what the cost of it would be, and then go from there. It just seems to me on this one, we're going from idea to a business case that's going to be in the multi-year budget. And I just think there's a step missing here. So if it didn't have the business case and we were going to get a report back on feasibility and cost, I would be happy to support it, but not this far along.
Councillor Lewis, I see you want to respond. I'm going to go to Councillor Hopkins, and then we're going to come to you next. Go ahead.
Thank you, and thank you for the comments. I don't have a problem with it, but I think it would be appropriate for us to get some information from staff on what this will mean to our budgeting process. And I don't have a problem with doing it, but I do want to let my colleagues know too. I represent a ward that in some areas have dial-up internet service too. So I think we have to be careful what we're doing here as we move forward. Have no problem with supporting this, but would like a little bit more information, and just being a little bit cautious doesn't hurt.
Councillor Lewis.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And just to provide a little bit of extra information and to respond in part to my colleagues' concerns, in meeting with Mr. Daly, he was able to provide me a draft plan that had an estimated cost of approximately $200,000. It was actually on his recommendation that I included the business case part of the language in this motion, because in fact, he was concerned that what he had was estimates and that the number may vary slightly, and wanted an opportunity to have direction from us to firm those numbers up so that when the multi-year budget process starts, if this is something we've identified as a priority, he has those numbers ready to go. Certainly if somebody wants to recommend an amendment to this, I'm amenable to that. I have been developing this in consultation with our staff, but if there's more information in here than colleagues are comfortable with at the time, if they'd like to change that, I'm amenable, because again, I want to get this out to the public for the consultation we're going to have over the next month, make sure that they have a chance to weigh in. So however we can get this into the strategic plan, I'm open to colleagues' options on that.
Well, and I will say this is a meeting about the strategic plan and not the multi-year budget. And so we're trying to do two things at once. I think that's what's coming up in the discussion. I'm going to go to Councillor Morgan. Go ahead.
Yes, I might suggest that the mover and the seconder drop the part about the multi-year budget process. If the process parallels what we did last time with the strategic plan, we go out with items in the strategic plan, we consult on them, and then strategic investment business cases are presented in a multi-year budget document that are relevant to the prioritization of the strategic plan. And so I think it's inherent that if it makes it through the strategic planning process, that there would be business cases presented in the multi-year budget. So I think it sounds to me like there's lots of support, and if that piece is dropped out about the business case in the multi-year budget, I would encourage the mover and seconder just to amend their motion at committee here, drop that piece, and you probably have wider support for this particular item.
In anticipation of that, the clerk has worked up a little bit of language. I'm just going to read it and see if perhaps that would be appropriate. That the public provision of Wi-Fi and recreation facilities, particularly in areas with existing appropriate network connectivity, be included in the draft 2019-2013 strategic plan. So to take out the multi-year budget part and focus it about adding it into the draft. I see a lot of nodding. Great. Any other speakers? We'll get that language up. Just checking with Councillor Van Holst, you're fine with that? We'll open up the vote on that.
Closing the vote, and the motion's carried, 12-1.
Okay, colleagues, any other discussion? Councilor Morgan.
Yes, given the discussion we had, I now have another question for Ms. Livingston on the strategic planning process, and that is, in part, the integration with the multi-year budget, in that if we're developing a strategic plan for a set time frame, and we could want to put many things in there, and the multi-year budget is the pacing of that strategic plan. How do we reconcile if we feel in the multi-year budget there are limited resources to do all the things that we wanted to do in the strategic plan? Is there a way that we can reconcile, and maybe this isn't an answer for today, having an adjusted strategic plan that basically sets out, here's the things we want to accomplish in the 4-year time frame, and although it's a strategic plan for that, there's strategic priorities that maybe couldn't be funded in 4 years that we want to pace out to the future. I know that that was a struggle I had myself with the last strategic plan, is that there was more than enough things to spend very limited resources on in it, and pacing them, you know, sometimes might not fit into a 4-year pacing cycle. So I wonder, maybe I'll just leave it with you as a way to reconcile that through the process so that we can actually put things that we really feel are important to the city in the plan, even if they might not be funded under a 4-year time horizon, but under maybe a longer time horizon.
Through the chair, one of the pieces of information that you're going to see for the March 4th meeting is the actual targets against these particular metrics. So what will happen in year 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 of the plan, and the associated order of magnitude resources, whether they're in the budget right now, base budget, or it would require additional. So I think you may see that information in time for your debate, and that would be the place to say, well, we want that to go faster, we'd like to spread it out longer, and then that's what then drives how the MYB will be developed.
Other discussion? Have a motion to receive. Councilor Morgan, seconder. Councilor Hopkins. Let's get that up on the screen.
Closing the vote, the motion carries, 14-0.
Thank you very much, colleagues, and thank you, Ms. Livingston, for the work to get us to this point. I think now that the strategies are out there and the metrics are going to be out there for people, we're going to get a lot of public feedback about, you know, where we should be going on this. I think that came up earlier when we were talking about the higher level things like vision and mission. I think when people dig into the substance, we're going to start to get a lot of feedback, and I'm certainly looking forward to that. I just moved to see if there's a motion to adjourn at this point. Councillor Squire. Councillor Van Meerbergen. Set that up on the screen.
Mr. Chair, I'll vote manually yay.
I see Councillor Salih's already adjourned his own meeting over there. Okay.
Councillor Cassidy? Closing the vote, the motion's passed, 14-0.
Thank you very much, colleagues. 2 meetings in one day, both relatively quick. Excellent work.